What is up, guys? Kid Kritic is back in a new format. As you can see here, he is back in a podcast form this time, not a video form. And you may be wondering, why is Kid Kritic doing a podcast? I'm like, you know what? I want to try something new. I love trying new things, and I'm like, how can you go any better than doing a podcast? So I was like, let's start up a Kid Kritic podcast. Now I want to start off on how this podcast is going to work. So, this show or podcast, whatever you want to call it, we're going to mostly talk about movies because, movies is the stuff. But in a laid-back format, kind of like a talking, not like a talking movies, like if you see my talking movies videos, they're very like strict and to the point, and we have 5 topics and boom. This is more of a laid back version where we'll talk for like 40 minutes to an hour or so that's basically what this will be. But we won't only just talk about movies, we'll also talk about video games, sports, or anything important happening in the world that we live in today. But at the end of the day, this is a podcast all about movies with some other fun stuff, but it is mainly movies because we love our movies. But if this isn't your cup of tea, then it's okay. Not every podcast or show is for everyone, and it's okay. But with that said, guys, if you want to stay and watch the Kid Kritic podcast, then by all means, let's start the first ever episode of the Kid Kritic podcast. What is up, guys, to the first ever Kid Kritic podcast where we talk about movies and all that other fun stuff, and I can't wait to start this podcast. I've been dreaming about this my whole entire life, and it's finally come true, and I cannot wait. So without further ado, let's start this podcast. And I wanted to start off with something that I saw earlier today, and it's probably one of the best things I've seen in my whole entire life. Now, if you guys haven't seen this, it's basically it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger commercial where he basically goes undercover as a used car salesman, and it is the best thing I have seen in my whole entire life. Like, I'm a huge Arnold fan. Like, for people out there who are not a huge Arnold fan, like, I just don't get it. Like, Predator is one of my favorite action movies of all time, and then Terminator 2, Commando, Kindergarten Cop. I mean, come on, it is Arnold Schwarzenegger who is way. But it is Arnold. I mean, come on, he's like, him and Stallone are like the best actors of all time. Like, oh my goodness, like, they are fantastic. But this part of the commercial just like made me crack up. So basically, you guys can search this up on YouTube. But there's this one part where this couple is basically asking for like a silent car that doesn't make a lot of noise. And he comes out with this big Hummer that's like loud and like has like a bunch of smoke and everything, and it's really funny. But then there's this one part where he takes them to the back of the car, and like the exhaust is just fuming. And then listen to what he says.
I love the smell of exhaust.
Like, I love the smell of exhaust. That is genius. Like, whoever came up with that is just like the best person ever. Like, they know how to use Arnold in some great material. That was just a fantastic line. But anyways, I just wanted to bring up that commercial. That was just hilarious. But anyway, something else though that I saw was Jeremy Renner. Now, I love Jeremy Renner as an actor. I think he's a fantastic actor. His performance in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol is fantastic, and it's also my favorite Mission Impossible film of all time. He's obviously Hawkeye, who is, I think, a great character, and I root for the underdogs, like Batman. He's my homie, because, he knows that he doesn't have powers like Superman or Wonder Woman or Green Lantern, and all those overpowered superheroes are just useless. It's all about Batman. But anyways, I love him as Hawkeye. I think he's great, and obviously him in Endgame is just fantastic. But something that he's doing right now, which actually caught me by surprise, because he posted this on his Instagram, that he's doing like some sort of like music stuff or whatever, and then so he came out with this, that he's basically doing a song, or he's recording a song right now. And I was like, you know what, I think that's really cool that he's branching out and doing new things, because I love it when people do new things, because I think that's how it makes them better. But anyways, so I'm getting this, right? And then he posts like this little sneak peek trailer thing of him singing, basically. Now, it's not horrible. I think he has a pretty good voice, I'm not gonna lie. But the beginning of it, I can't make up what he's saying. Like, listen to this. Like, the beginning of it's like, like, that's what I hear. And then it's like, okay, I love Jeremy Renner, okay? Jeremy Renner, if you're listening to this, I love you. You're a great actor. And I think he has a pretty solid voice, but I cannot make out what he's saying. He's like, like, I can't make up what he's saying. It might be a fantastic song. It might be my favorite song of all time. He might be my favorite singer of all time. So I'm obviously going to listen to it. But I don't know. I just found that to be odd. Now, something else that I wanted to talk about. So, as I was going to sleep the other night, I managed to fall asleep to probably the best movie you can fall asleep to, and that is Django Unchained. And I started to think about Quentin Tarantino, because obviously he made that film, and I think he's a fantastic filmmaker. I mean, obviously many people do. And speaking about Tarantino, when he went to Cannes for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they did. So if you guys didn't hear, they did a 6-minute standing ovation. I was like, nah, that's a lie. And they posted something of them applauding, and it was 3 minutes. They didn't post 6 minutes. It was 3 minutes. And I was like, and it's funny because seeing like DiCaprio's and Brad Pitt's and Margot Robbie's reactions was just hilarious because they're trying to like not act boring up there because you don't want to act boring. I mean, you're a huge star. Everybody's looking at you, you know. And then Tarantino's doing like the funniest things. You guys gotta see it. But anyways, back to Tarantino and Django and all that. Tarantino's just like a one of a kind. Like, his style, nobody has his style. The way he portrays dialogue, like Pulp Fiction is a fantastic example of that. Like, his dialogue is just like no other director. Like, Steven Spielberg's my favorite director of all time, but Steven Spielberg can't even master the dialogue of Tarantino, which is amazing. And it's crazy to think that Django Unchained is such an amazing film. Like, if you were to place that film in any other director's like catalog of films, if that was their best film, that is brilliant. But Django Unchained isn't even my first or even my second favorite Tarantino film. Like, right now, my top two is Inglourious Bastards and probably Reservoir Dogs, and then I have like a Pulp Fiction or a Django up there. That's right, I didn't say Pulp Fiction was my top two. If you guys don't like that, then whatever. But he's just such a master of filmmaking that when they announced Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when you get a Quentin Tarantino and a Leonardo DiCaprio with a Brad Pitt and a Margot Robbie, and oh wait, let's just add in a little bit of Al Pacino. And then when I saw the trailer, I'm like, Kurt Russell's in this? Like, what did they do? Like, what is the budget of this movie? Like, it was just jaw-dropping. Speaking of budgets, when I saw this, so Christopher Nolan, who is a fantastic filmmaker who made my favorite comic book film of all time in The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight, I can just speak about that movie all day. But Christopher Nolan is making a new, I believe, World War II film called Tenet, who also has Robert Pattinson, who's our new Batman, by the way, which I'm totally fine with. I mean, I don't know Robert Pattinson well as an actor. Like, I knew he was in Twilight, obviously, because Twilight. I've never seen any of those movies, nor do I care to see any of those movies. And I hear that he's kind of like enhanced his career big time because he's in all these like indie films where he's made huge performances. And right now he's signed on to do Tenet, which is directed by Christopher Nolan, like I already said, and he's also going to be Batman. But so Christopher Nolan is doing this Tenet film at Warner Brothers, obviously. And Warner Brothers is giving Christopher Nolan a $225 million budget. Like, that is absolutely jaw-dropping. Now, names in Hollywood, like big names in Hollywood, are a huge thing. Like, if Christopher Nolan wants $225 million budget, if you're a Warner Brothers executive, they don't care. You're a Christopher Nolan, and you have proven movies like Inception to make a $828 million budget when they didn't even think that movie was going to make squat. And it's funny now that Warner Brothers is now taking the credit for Inception, but you know, whatever. And then he makes a movie like Dunkirk, which made $526 million at the box office on a $100 million budget. I mean, that won't make, if if Tenet makes that amount of money, that won't even make the budget back. Because if it has a budget of 225 plus marketing, so you have to make 2.5 times your budget. So that's like $620 million or so. Dunkirk didn't even make that, but Interstellar is also a big one. It made 677. I don't know the budget for that film, but you can search that up on your own if you want. But that just tells you how big names like Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese are in Hollywood, because it doesn't matter. They know that you bring business, and you know that you mean business. And when Christopher Nolan's like, I want $225 to make this Tenet film with Robert Pattinson, and they're like, yes. Like, don't even tell me the premise. Yes. Like, if he came to the executives at Warner Brothers and is like, I want to make a movie about Billy Bob Joe, and it's about how big his turds are, they will give him a $300 million budget, because they know it's Christopher Nolan, and he's proven that he can make the money back. And that is just absolutely jaw-dropping. Now, I'm totally going to switch subjects here, and that's going to happen time to time. Something else that came out yesterday, actually, was the new Star Wars game, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, is a Star Wars game coming out later this year. Now, I know Star Wars games have been a little bit of a slump, I would say, ever since the old Star Wars games, obviously. They had Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2, which in my opinion were huge disappointments. They weren't horrible, but they were like boring, I would say, after a while. Anyways, they come out with the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order later this year, I believe in November, and they came out with 26 minutes of gameplay in this game, and I've seen headlines for the gameplay footage, and a lot of people have said that it's pretty underwhelming. But I gotta admit, after watching the gameplay, I actually quite enjoyed it. Lightsaber gameplay in this game looks absolutely fantastic. I mean, and then the way you can use the Force. I mean, you could toss around stormtroopers. That makes a Star Wars nerd freak. That is just so cool. And then there's this one part where the main character, who is Cal Kestis, I believe is his name, who basically like takes a stormtrooper and like stabs him with the lightsaber. It's like, yes. And then you also get some of the story in this film. Now, something that kind of stood out, I would say, out of the whole storyline gameplay that they showed in this, was that he meets up with Saw Gerrera, which we saw in the trailer, who I like Saw Gerrera. I mean, I thought he was good in Rogue One. I mean, he definitely had some funky moments in Rogue One. I love Rogue One, by the way. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, is a fantastic Star Wars film. I love Rogue One. But however, so he meets up with Saw Gerrera, and I forgot how he ends up talking about. So it's end up talking about like who is Cal Kestis' master, basically, because Cal Kestis is still a Padawan. But by the way, he has a lot of skill to be a Padawan. Like the way he uses the Force and the lightsaber, like I don't think Anakin could have done that. But anyways, so he's the main character, and then they start talking about his master, and they never really say who his master is. So that got me thinking, like, who can his master be, since they're being very vague on it? And I'm like, could it be Obi-Wan? Could it be any other character that we've seen? So I found that to be very interesting. But I thought overall, I am so excited to see this. But again, we've seen in the past that Star Wars games can have amazing footage. Again, Battlefront 2, amazing trailer, and then it had its problems, obviously, and I don't really need to get into that. And then Battlefront 1, again, had its problems, but yeah. And most people would say that we haven't had a good Star Wars game since Force Unleashed, and I'm very excited to see this. The story looks compelling. I'm enjoying the character and his little droid. I think that's awesome how you can use the little droid. I mean, yeah, you can say the same thing about Battlefront 2, but that was pretty forgettable. And I cannot wait to get my hands on Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and I'm sure most people will get this, and it's going to have some competition because I believe Call of Duty comes out the same month, which also looks like a fantastic game. But you know something that isn't fantastic, and that is NBC pulling The Office from Netflix, and I believe it's 2021 when they're taking it off. Now look, I'm not an Office fan. Like, I've seen episodes of it, and I enjoyed it. I mean, Steve Carell is amazing. Everybody's amazing in that. That's where John Krasinski obviously is, who directed a magnificent film, A Quiet Place, which, if you guys didn't know, was my favorite movie of 2018. But anyways, they pull The Office off of Netflix. Now, the top two most watched things on Netflix, other than some of their new content, which they had had some great new television. But the top two things that are probably most watched by most people is probably The Office and Friends. Now, I have a funny story when it comes to Friends. So it was a couple weeks ago, and I saw a student ask a teacher. They were like, I was on Netflix, and have you ever watched the show Friends? And I heard that, and I just started cracking up. And I mean, I get it. It started in '93 and then went to 2003, and it was a long time period. But for somebody who didn't live during the Friends era, probably doesn't know how popular it was, and it was a very popular show, obviously, because it's grown on for many generations, and it is a fantastic sitcom because I do love Friends as well. Okay, now getting back to The Office. Now, look, this is going to be a huge effect on Netflix. Now, people are probably thinking, man, with Disney Plus coming, with everybody making their streaming services, probably going to take a bunch of their IPs and content off of Netflix. Netflix is going to be toast, right? I kind of don't think so, because, look, Netflix knows this time is coming. Right now, I think Netflix is the king of the hill when it comes to streaming service. And then I probably put like an Amazon Prime and a Hulu right there. Or an HBO, obviously, because HBO has been huge for such a long time. But Netflix, I feel like they knew that this time was coming. And I feel like they've been preparing. And they're like, we need to get as much great content out on our streaming platform as possible, and you can see that by the amount of money that they put into their streaming service when it comes to making original content, because it is just jaw-dropping how much money they've spent, because I mean, they're even in debt. When you look at their catalog of Netflix originals, and I'm looking more at TV shows, because to be honest, all the movies that I've seen of Netflix have been mostly mediocre to absolutely poor. Now, right now, they have actually Always Be My Maybe, which is a huge hit. I'm yet to see it. I know I'm a little bit late to that, but like, here's a list of their Netflix original television. Like, BoJack Horseman, huge show. Stranger Things, do I even have to explain that? Orange is the New Black. I mean, come on. American Vandal, Mindhunter, which I hear is amazing. Russian Doll, which is a new show that I hear is amazing. You have, let's see here. You have Glow, which is a huge hit series. The Umbrella Academy. All these shows are huge right now on Netflix. There's even shows there that people are not talking about that I bet you are amazing. And then they also have their Marvel stuff, like the Daredevil, the Jessica Jones, the Luke Cage, but was obviously canceled. But a lot of people love those shows. I love Daredevil. They also have Big Mouth. Huge show. Ozark. Come on. They have so many great original content when it comes to television. Now, movies, that's a whole different story. Will Netflix survive? Absolutely. Will they still be at the top of the food chain? I don't know, because Disney is putting all hands on deck into this streaming service, because whether it's from Marvel with the Loki series, from the Scarlet Witch and Vision series, with the Falcon and Bucky series, or new Captain America and Bucky series. Oh, spoilers by the way for Endgame, but by now, I mean, it's practically almost made $2-3 billion. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody has seen the movie. And then you have The Mandalorian, which I cannot wait for. The Mandalorian, like, there's people out there that are more excited for Mandalorian than Episode 9. Now, I don't know if I'm one of those people yet, but Mandalorian, like, I saw leaked footage of The Mandalorian that they showed at, I forgot what it was at Star Wars Celebration. I saw some leaked footage, and it looked great. Jon Favreau, who's the showrunner, and then you have all these directors. Jon Favreau is just absolutely brilliant, and he has so many things. He's probably the most busiest person in Hollywood right now, because he just had this chef show again on Netflix. I watched it. It was a great show. Highly recommend it. And then he has Lion King. Can you imagine how much time that took him? That movie looks just, oh my god. And then Lion King is just breaking records right now when it comes to online ticket sales, just behind Endgame. I mean, it's pretty hard to beat Endgame, but, and then he has The Mandalorian, which he's the showrunner for, and Jon Favreau is just absolutely brilliant. But so Disney Plus also has Mandalorian, and then they have the Lady and the Tramp new show, and they're probably doing a lot of stuff with their Disney stuff. Disney Plus is putting all hands on deck. But can you imagine if everything goes south with all this stuff? Like, what would Disney do? It's like kind of like the DC Universe streaming service. Like, they canceled Swamp Thing, which is getting raving reviews, but something about taxes and all that money stuff that we all love. Yeah, that went down. And then you always have Doom Patrol, which is also on there, which is a huge hit right now. You also have Titans, which I hear is pretty mediocre, but better than that trailer we saw, which was just awful. That trailer at Comic-Con for Titans, whoo, that was stinky. But what I think Warner Brothers probably gonna do is probably put DC and Warner and their own Warner Brothers streaming service together, unless they do some bundle. And look, this also got me thinking. I'm like, this is getting to the point where this is getting more expensive for cable, because one of the bright spots of streaming service that was cheaper than cable, but it's not that anymore, because people are probably paying now between like $150 to $200 a month for this stuff. Now Disney Plus is obviously having people pay $6, $7 a month when it comes out, but that's obviously not going to stay. I give that 2 days before they announce, oh, it's going to be $30 a month now. Now they're not going to say that, but like, it's definitely going to increase by a certain amount, especially with the amount of content that they're putting on this. It's just, I'm so excited. And plus all the Disney stuff from the old days. It's just so many streaming service. Again, Universal, because NBC just pulled The Office because of their streaming service. Netflix, Hulu, which is owned by Disney. You have the ESPN streaming service. You have Disney Plus, which is coming out. Amazon Prime. It is just CBS All Access, which has Star Trek Discovery. It is getting to the point where it's getting more than cable, and people are going to have to decide between which streaming service they're going to want to get, or they're gonna tell their neighbor next door and be like, "Hey, you get Disney Plus and I get Netflix." But I'm pretty sure they're smarter than that, and that's not gonna stay for very long, because I'm sure there's gonna be a point where they're gonna be like, okay, every individual account you have to pay for. Like, it can't be a group. I bet you it's gonna get to that point, and next thing you know it, Mama's gonna tell little Jimmy and be like, "Hey, Jimmy, get off your Netflix. I want to get some of that Netflix action too." And I bet you that's how it's gonna get to. And this streaming service battle is just absolutely insane, but very entertaining. And just all this content we are getting, all this television, great television, which leads into my next topic, by the way. And my next topic is television the first half of 2019. Look, I'm not a TV fanatic. Like, I watch television shows. I don't watch that many. Like right now I watch like 6, which is the most I've ever watched in a long time. Like, I usually watch like 2 or 3 television shows. But I've just heard all this raving stuff about all these TV shows on all these different streaming services. And obviously, so I wanted to talk about some TV that we had the first half of 2019, at least what I saw. The first one I want to talk about is Game of Thrones. You know, I've referenced Game of Thrones in a couple videos here and there on the Kid Kritic YouTube channel, which make sure you subscribe. And this podcast will also probably be uploaded on the Kid Kritic channel, by the way. So let's talk about Game of Thrones now. Yes, highly divisive season of Game of Thrones in the final season, sadly. Now, what's my stance on the season 8 of Game of Thrones? I loved season 8 of Game of Thrones. I actually really loved it. I do agree the season finale did come off a little bit dull, I'd say. The first half is awesome. Now, people have been saying, oh, the writing sucks. The writing sucks. The turn of Daenerys. Oh, by the way, spoilers for this if you haven't seen all of Game of Thrones season 8. Oh, Daenerys turns bad. That came out of nowhere. What? That came out of nowhere? Do you know how many people she's burnt? Like, this has been from the start, and it runs through the Targaryen bloodline, obviously, from the Mad King to her brother, which got old all over him right now as we speak. And you guys know my reference, obviously, if you've seen Game of Thrones. But it's just been you can see the process of it happening, and once you see her face before she burns all of King's Landing, you're like, yeah, she's gone full-on Mad Queen. But I loved season 8 of Game of Thrones, and I'm sad to see it end. I was just a sobbing mess. But I do think the standouts of season 8 Game of Thrones, before we move on to the next television show, is probably Arya Stark, obviously, as Sansa Stark. Whew. Like, every time they were on screen, they just had a presence. Like, everybody dropped their coffee mug. Get it? Coffee mug. Everybody dropped their coffee mug and paid attention to that screen because they were a force to reckon with, and they were just awesome. Like, the acting in this was amazing. Tyrion, by the way, I gotta give a shout out to my boy Tyrion Lannister. He is amazing. He has so many great scenes. Like, that scene in the final episode with him and Jon Snow in the cell. Oh, the writing in that scene was so good. But anyways, yeah, I love season 8 Game of Thrones. If you don't, it's alright, you know. Everything's subjective when it comes to stuff like this. But anyways, let's move on to the next show that I thought was amazing. That is Barry on HBO. Barry with Bill Hader, obviously. I was late to the train. Like, season 2 was already over, and I actually binged the whole thing a couple weeks ago of Barry. And everybody's like, Barry, 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 Barry. Like, I haven't heard Barry so much. Barry, Barry, Barry. And they're like, it's so good. It's so good. And I'm like, all right, let me give this a shot. It's 30-minute episodes, which is not bad. And I went through the first season, and, like, I watched 4 episodes in one day and the other 4 the second day, because it's 8 episodes a season. Even the second season was also 8 episodes. And it was so good. Like, this is not for everyone. Like, there is some outrageous stuff. So let's talk about season 2 of Barry, because that's 2019. But season 1 is awesome. I loved season 2. I don't think it's quite as good as season 1, however. But season 2 is awesome. People talked about, season 2, episode 5. It's so good. It's so good. It's the best thing I've seen all mankind. And I was like, okay, here we go, season 2, episode 5, here we come. And like, I'll say this, probably one of the most outrageous episodes of television I have seen in my whole entire life. Like, there's stuff that happens in that episode that I'm just like, oh my god. But at the same time, I was outbursting, just laughing. And you know what I'm talking about if you've seen that episode of Barry. It is just what is happening. Now, there's times where it gets a little too over the top, I'll say. Like, I don't love the episode as much as other people do, but it is a fantastic episode. And I do think that the beginning of season 2 did start off a bit slow, but season 2 of Barry was great. A lot of unpredictable stuff, and that's what I love about shows like Game of Thrones and Barry. Very unpredictable. You don't know who's gonna go out. Like, that person that died in the last episode of season 1, I was like, whoo, like, oh man, like, for them to have a main character like Barry, which is played by Bill Hader, and Bill Hader just, like, showed some chops in this show. Like, before the show, I always knew Bill Hader as the comedic guy. Obviously, Superbad, SNL. He was always the comedic guy. And then he was casted in It Chapter 2, which comes out later this year, which I'm so excited for, by the way. And I was like, oh, Bill Hader. I mean, all right, let's trying something new. But then I saw Barry. I'm like, wow, this guy's got some chops. And Bill Hader is probably one of my favorite people right now. Like, he's so good in this show. But anyways, Barry, fantastic show. Other HBO show, Chernobyl. Chernobyl is the best show of the year. It's better than Barry. I loved it. It's better than season 8 of Game of Thrones. Again, loved it. Chernobyl, it's a mini-series. It's, I believe, 5-6 episodes, 1 hour each episode. It is so good. I already knew about the Chernobyl accident, if you want to call it, in Ukraine. I already knew about it. It's horrific. I mean, you still can't go there because of how toxic it is. But this show, the acting in this show is a whole other level. It is haunting. And that episode, you guys know what I'm talking about. That episode with the dogs. I'm a dog person. I love dogs. But if you're a dog person, if you survive through that episode, it's like surviving through war. It's like if you saw your best bud die. Like, it was just so haunting, but you get why they did it. Because it was just so scary. You saw all the corruption, all the humanity in that show. Somebody said that there's corruption. You saw the humanity of it. And I totally agree with that, because that's exactly what makes the show so great. But if you haven't seen Chernobyl, you gotta see it. It is just powerful. It is just dramatic. Like, give it the gold, all the Emmys. I was about to say Golden Globes, but give it all the Emmys. It deserves all of it. And you also have Stellan Skarsgård in there, who is brilliant in the show. Every character is awesome in that show. The performance is top notch, scary. The makeup in that show is just disgusting in a good way. And it's just like, what would you do in that situation? It's just a haunting show, but so good. Just so good. But anyways, another show, and the last show I want to talk about is a Netflix show, and it's also based off of true events, and that is When They See Us. It is 4 episodes, also a mini-series, an hour each, and Ava DuVernay was behind it, produced it, and directed all 4 episodes. And look, when Ava DuVernay is on her A game, she cranks out some gold. Like Selma, fantastic film. I heard Wrinkle in Time wasn't so good, so I didn't really go check it out. And then she comes out with When They See Us. When They See Us, look, I loved Chernobyl. It's definitely my favorite show of the year. But When They See Us is the most powerful show. Again, Chernobyl's the best show that I've seen this year. But When They See Us is the most powerful show that I've seen. Like, it gave me chills. Just to see, like, what happens just makes you sick to your core. It is haunting, but the end is just like, yeah, like you want to root for them. It is a brilliant show, and Ava DuVernay is so good when it comes to this stuff. I think like she is good when it comes to stuff like Selma and When They See Us. When it comes to stuff like true events like this, and she is so good. And give her all the credit, because the way she brought out all those performances is magnificent. The kids in this show was just like, oh, and then you find out like how many years they've been in jail, and it's just like, wow, how, like, what would you, when I was watching the show, I'm like, what would my reaction be if I were in their spot? It is just sad and powerful, and it's just a brilliant show. I'm sure everybody has heard of When They See Us, but When They See Us is such a great show. And again, if you haven't seen When They See Us, or if you haven't seen Barry or Chernobyl, you gotta catch up on that, because it is some great television. And then I'm sure there's more to come for the second half of 2019, and we actually have Stranger Things coming out next week, which I actually really like. Stranger Things, the first season I thought was awesome. I actually like the second season more than most people do. Do I think it's as good as the first season? I'd probably put it on a par with the first season. Like, I quite enjoyed that second season. I definitely think that episode that had to do with like 11 looking for other people like her, I definitely think that was a waste of an episode. But I'm very looking forward to that, and I'm sure there's a lot of great television to look forward to. Now, something else you may be looking forward to, which sort of comes out this weekend, and that is the Avengers Endgame re-release, if you want to call it, because it is still in theaters now. Look, so basically this re-release is going to include a deleted scene, a post-credit scene, and a Stan Lee tribute, which is awesome, because that's why I would go, because Stan Lee, he's the man. He is the man. It is Stan Lee. Now, I see why Disney would do this, because, you know, they want that record. I believe right now Endgame is around $2.75 billion, I believe, and Avatar has $780 million. So it needs around 35 million. That'd be 36 to be exact, because I know my numbers. About $36 million to catch up to Avatar. Now, I see Disney wants that record, either though Disney didn't own Fox at the time when Avatar came out in 2009. They basically hold all the records, because now Disney owns Fox, so they basically can say, oh yeah, Avatar, that's our movie, even though we didn't own it at the time. But Disney shouldn't just buy the world if they want to. I mean, they own Fox, Marvel, Lucasfilm, ESPN, ABC, Hulu. Just give them Warner Brothers if they want. But I see why they're doing this re-release. Now, is it going to work? I don't know, because I looked up times for the Endgame re-release, and I'll search it up again right now just to make sure. But I saw limited theaters for this re-release, and I was like surprised, because if they want that record, they're gonna have to do way more than that, because you have to make $30 million when it just made $3 million, I believe, right now at the box office. Now, it might have a boost with Far From Home coming out, which we'll talk about pretty soon. With Far From Home coming out, It might have a little boost with that, which I don't know if Infinity War did with when Ant-Man and the Wasp came out, but it's gonna have to do way better than just to be in a couple of theaters. Now I've seen it marketed on social media, but I haven't seen any commercials. But that means they're gonna have to pay more money, which then adds money to the budget, which but at this point, who cares? It's Disney. But the thing is, when Disney owns all these IPs and companies and all that, they kind of end up being their own enemy, I'd say. So right now they just had Toy Story 4 coming in with its second weekend. They're about to have Spider-Man Far From Home, and then the weekend after that, they have Lion King. Those are heavy hitters right there. Like, those are billion-dollar films. Like, Toy Story 4, it's gonna make $1 billion. Far From Home, probably gonna make $1 billion. Lion King, no questions asked, gonna make $1 billion, maybe even $2 billion. I don't know, but it's gonna make $1 billion. So right now, Disney is basically its own enemy when it comes to the box office and all of that. Even though they're still making a lot of money, but as time passes on, the more and more I think I just don't see it happening, because there's so many blockbusters coming out, and then the lower the income is coming in on box office for Endgame. And the thing is, when Endgame first came out, it had that bonkers weekend. It almost made $1 billion on its first weekend, which will probably never happen again. But so many people, somebody made this point, so many people nowadays go to the movies on the first weekend. And you can totally see that. So many people go to the movies on the first weekend. Like, I went to go see Endgame 2 times when it came out. The first weekend. I saw it Friday and I saw it Saturday. So many people did that. Probably more than twice. And by the end of the weekend, they're probably like, nah, I'm good. I already saw it like a gajillion times. I'll just wait till it comes out. Like, right now. So right now, I just searched up the re-release for Avengers Endgame around me, and there's a couple of theaters. Like, I just saw an AMC that was like 30 minutes away in a Regal. It's like, really? That's not gonna get you that record. And this also shows how big Avatar is, and it had legs, which is something Endgame doesn't have. It didn't have legs. It made a lot of money, obviously, but it didn't have the legs that Avatar had. And again, the same person made the same point. When Avatar came out, that was a different era. Avatar was in theaters for weeks and weeks and weeks. You never see that anymore. Endgame was in the top 5 for what, a month? Even? It's like, no, because I mean, it came out at end of April. In May, you had Detective Pikachu, Aladdin, and Godzilla, and that's just the 3 big ones that came out in May. I'm not even talking about the little ones like Ma or Rocket Man that came out. You don't see people going every single weekend to watch the same movie. It was a different era in that time. It's more people are more front and loaded and be like, okay, we're gonna go watch this so many times first weekend, alright? And then then we're done. We'll wait till Blu-ray release or digital release, or however you watch your movies when it comes out. I'm a Blu-ray person. I like my physical media. But it's just a different era, and again, Disney's playing a bit of an enemy towards themselves, because they're kind of preventing a little bit from Endgame making that money. And it's so funny when people say, oh man, Endgame was such a failure, it didn't catch Avatar. Endgame made $2.7 billion. $2.7 billion. That is the rarest thing ever. Ever. 2 movies, like 4 or 5 movies have made $2 billion. Infinity War, Titanic, Endgame, Avatar, obviously, and some other, and Force Awakens. And those are the only films that have made over $2 billion. And it also comes to show how much it takes to take that record, because Endgame was 11 years in the making. Avatar was, I don't know, how long did it take to make that movie? 3 years, I'm guessing. And it was a singular film that was not a part of a franchise. It's just insane how much it takes to get this record. And if Endgame doesn't catch this record, it's gonna be a very long time until we see Avatar beaten. it's gonna be a very, very long time. I mean, I'm sure people thought Force Awakens was gonna beat it. I was one of those people. I thought Force Awakens was gonna beat Avatar. It didn't. Obviously, it came very, very, very short of that. It didn't even beat Titanic, which is a heavy hitter again. Titanic, different era, 96, 97, 98. I don't know, one of those late 90s years that Titanic came out. Different era. People went week to week to week to watch the same movies. You don't see that anymore. People are more front and loaded again to see the movie 5, 6, 3, 2, I don't know how many times you want to go see that movie. And then like an Endgame, people want to go see it 5 times in the weekend. It's like insane. I mean, there's theaters that did the whole 24 hours showings of Endgame, which is absolutely insane. I mean, I don't know if I'd stay up. I mean, it's a 3-hour movie. That's another thing. It was 3 hours long. If it was 15 minutes shorter, which, I mean, I don't think it needed to be, and it probably would have made the movie worse, maybe. So I don't care how long the movie is, but if it was 15 minutes shorter, it probably would have been Avatar, because that would have created more showings and more theater rooms, whatever, for it to be open to play in. So I definitely think that played a big part into it. Now, let's move on to something else that is a part of the MCU, and that is SpiderMan Far From Home. Now, the reviews just came out, and they're pretty good. It currently has, last time I checked, SpiderMan Far From Home has a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I have a little story for this, actually. So, my friend of mine is a big Spider-Man fan. Huge Spider-Man fan. Probably the biggest Spider-Man fan I've ever known and probably will ever know. And I love Spider-Man. I think he's a fantastic character. I'd probably put him top 10, maybe 5 superheroes characters of all time. Obviously, Batman's my number 1 because, he is the best. So, Spider-Man Far From Home comes out, and it is getting really good reviews. I've heard reviews that say it's the best Spider-Man movie ever, which is big praise because obviously you have to be Spider-Man 2, which is most people's favorite comic book movie of all time, and definitely at the time it came out. You have to beat Homecoming, which I think is a brilliant film. You have to beat Spider-Verse, which is fantastic, which is my favorite Spider-Man film. But anyways, to continue on my story, so he's the biggest Spider-Man fan ever, and I'm like, hey, look, the Spider-Man Far From Home has a 90% or 91%, I don't remember that at the time when I sent it. It has a 90-something% on Rotten Tomatoes, and he was like, man, I wanted it to have 96 to 100. I'm like, that's disappointing. I'm like, what? I'm like, do you know how rare it is for a movie to have a 90% or over have on Rotten Tomatoes? I'm like, Infinity War didn't even have that. I think it's like an 84. There's some great movies that don't have a 90. But I mean, I get it. Look, he's a big Spider-Man fan, obviously. Very enthusiastic about it. I mean, I am too, especially when it comes to a Batman movie. I'd be like, what? It doesn't have 100? That is disappointing. But I'm obviously being very over dramatic. But I mean, I get where he's coming from. So right now, Spider-Man Far From Home currently has on Rotten Tomatoes, drum roll please, Spider-Man Far From Home. Oh, I spelled it wrong. But anyways, as I'll speak while I'm searching this up. But I've heard a lot of people say, oh, Mysterio's great. It is brilliant end credit scene, and I have a prediction. For the end credit scene of Spider-Man Far From Home. I think that the end credit scene is either going to be setting up for Phase 4, because this is the last entry for Phase 3 of the MCU, which is brilliant because Phase 3 has been probably my favorite phase, I'd say, of the MCU, because you have movies like Civil War, which is my favorite MCU film. You have Homecoming, obviously. You have the Avengers films. You have some great stuff in there. So I think it's probably going to be something like that. And then, or I think this is going to be a little bit of a reach here. I kind of think Venom, Eddie Brock, played by Tom Hardy, will show up. I think it's a 30% chance that will happen. Is it? I don't think it will, but I've heard Kevin Feige is open to it, so I'm like, all right. I if they make it work, Sure, why not? It's Kevin Feige. He is the man. So right now, currently, Spider-Man Far From Home has 103 critics total count, 90% certified fresh. I think that is awesome. There's only so many movies that get a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. That means 90% of the critics liked it. Now, I've heard reactions saying it's the best Spider-Man film ever. It is a really good film. It's a nice palate cleanser from Endgame, and it's a nice, enjoyable time. Obviously, there's people that don't like it because every movie's subjective, so that's going to happen. But I think that's awesome. I cannot wait to see Far From Home and sing it next week, and I'll look out for my Spider-Man Far From Home review, and I cannot wait to see this film. Now, our second and last topic that I want to cover on today's show, and that is, now, 2 trailers came out today. Charlie's Angels trailer. I don't really want to talk about the Charlie's Angels trailer because I'm not a big Charlie's Angels fan. However, you can see my trailer reaction to it. It is up on the Kid Kritic channel. I'm not a huge Charlie's Angels fan, but it was alright. I don't think it's going to be for me. But one that I do want to talk about that came out, and that is the trailer for Midway. And if you guys don't know about it, it's basically about the Battle of Midway. It's a World War II film. And as I was watching it, great trailer, by the way. I also have a trailer reaction up on the Kid Kritic channel that you can see right there, and make sure you check it out because it is a pretty darn trailer reaction. Again, that was pretty good. But anyways, the trailer was really good. And I don't know why, but it reminded me of Pearl Harbor because it was about ships and, bombings and all that stuff. So it's obviously going to remind you about Pearl Harbor. So I went to go rewatch the Pearl Harbor first trailer. I don't like Pearl Harbor very much. I don't think many people do. And I'm looking at the runtime for Pearl Harbor. 3 hours. 3 hours. Goodness gracious. But the trailer for Pearl Harbor, it is so good. The trailer for Pearl Harbor is so good. Now look, here's the thing with Michael Bay, because Michael Bay made Pearl Harbor. And I was supposed to talk about Midway, but I just went on. Let me finish my point. Michael Bay made Pearl Harbor, obviously. I'm not the biggest fan of Michael Bay. He's made some good stuff. Like 13 Hours, I think, was the last film that he made that I liked. I quite enjoyed 13 Hours. Like his Transformers films, stink. That Pain and Gain film that he did with The Rock, Mark Wahlberg, and I think Anthony Mackie was in that. Stinks. Here's the thing with Michael Bay. You gotta know when you're not funny. Michael Bay is not funny. Like, he's just not. Like that one part in Age of Extinction, Transformers, where Mark Wahlberg takes a big gulp of the Bud Light. Like, that was supposed to be a joke, and then Merlin cracking jokes and getting drunk. Oh my god, it was awful. Awful. But, I mean, Michael Bay has his good films. I don't totally hate on Michael Bay. I'm sure he's a great human being, which I've actually heard. But the Pearl Harbor trailer was just so good to a not so good movie. It wasn't, like, it focused a lot on the trailer focused a lot on, like, the bombings, and obviously because it's Pearl Harbor. And the movie is about a love triangle. It's not about Pearl Harbor. It should have been called Love Triangle between Ben Affleck and I forgot who else was in it because I just forgot. That movie's forgettable. I don't think it's horrible. It's just forgettable. As you can tell, I even forgot who was in it. I think I don't know. But anyways, it was not even about that, and it made me thinking that all these Michael Bay films have had such good trailers. Like, you can say what you want about the Transformers movies. I don't like them, except for Bumblebee. Bumblebee's fantastic. You can see my review that I made when it came out on the Kid Kritic channel. But they've made such good trailers for Michael Bay movies that just suck. And it brings people to the theater because the trailers were so good. And it's like he goes to a studio and he's like, and he pitches his idea and he's like, oh yeah, so I want to make this and this and that. And the executives are probably like, man, that sucks. But we can make a great trailer out of that and bring some audiences. Like, I feel like that's what goes down. But anyways, back to Midway. I love this trailer. This trailer was just fantastic. Now it's obviously show a lot about the Midway. Now is it gonna be a movie all of a sudden about love triangle? I hope not. But you have a great cast in there. Like, I saw Aaron Eckhart in there. Like, I wish Aaron Eckhart was in some more stuff, like good stuff. Like, I mean, obviously, the first time I saw him was The Dark Knight and really got his name, obviously, because that's what really put him on the map, I would say. But then he was a bunch of movies that just bombed and sucked, and it really was just took down his career, I would say, a little bit. And then he was in Sully, which came out a couple years ago with Tom Hanks, which was made by Clint Eastwood, which is a very good movie. I thought he was awesome in the film. I think he's a terrific actor. And he's in this film, Pearl Harbor. Goodness gracious. He was in Midway, and he looks fantastic in the film. And has a great cast. Midway has a fantastic cast. Like, you have Luke Evans, Woody Harrelson, Mandy Moore, Dennis Quaid, Patrick Wilson, Nick Jonas, who actually isn't that bad. I saw him in he was in Jumanji, and I thought he was really good. Aaron Eckhart again, Ed Scarin. I think I'm saying his name wrong, but whatever. He's terrific. But this movie has a great cast, and I'm really looking forward to this. Again, I think it's actually a November release, but yeah. So now on to my final topic. Now, this isn't for most people, but if something they gotta know about Kid Kritic. He's a Funko Pops fanatic. Like, he loves his Funko Pops. Like, I have over 100. Like, I've been collecting for, I would say, 3 years now. I love my Funko Pops. And now San Diego Comic-Con is coming up, and obviously it's big time because that's when all the studios go, except for Warner Brothers this year, or DC, I gotta say, which kind of sucks. Marvel's gonna be there. That's gonna be fun. Probably might announce Phase 4, maybe. I don't know. But usually, if you collect Funko Pops, you know that San Diego Comic-Con has their exclusive Funko Pops. Now, I'm probably going to talk about Funko Pops a lot on this podcast because, it's my jam. Like, if I pick up a pop, I might talk about it. Like, the other day, I picked up Alfred Hitchcock, great pop. And I also got the Batman 1989, great pop. I mean, there's some sucky pops, definitely, absolutely. But it's great. So, I looked at the San Diego Comic-Con exclusives that they just came out for this year. Last year was really good. I really liked last year's. This year's was fine. They're not the best. Like, some I don't care for, but ones that did stand out. The first one I gotta say, that Jaws. Oh my god, that looks so good. I cannot wait to get my hands on that, but they don't know. They haven't released like where they'll be exclusive to, like a GameStop, a Hot Topic, or whatever, or Amazon. They haven't really said what it's exclusive to, but I need to get my hands on that. Another one that kind of like made me cry a little bit because of the movie, and that is the Up double pack. I don't know the characters' names, but it's when the old guy, Carl, I believe is his name, when he's younger, and it's like the first 10 minutes, the beginning of the first 10 minutes, when they're kids. That pop, it's him when he's a young kid, and his wife, I believe his wife's name was Ellie, when they were both younger. They have the pops of that. Whew, looks amazing. They also have some Toy Story pops, which I'm a big fan of. But I would say that most of the pops, I would say, that are exclusive for San Diego Comic-Con this year, I think I either don't care about it or it's just forgettable. Because some of them, like, I'll probably skip out on that. I'm just going to skip out a lot on this year. Like, that Jaws one is going to be in my hands. That 2-pack of Up in my hands. Because Up is brilliant. There's a lot of people talk about that first 10 minutes. And it's definitely one of the best visual storytelling I've seen. That first 10 minutes, like, that is just heart-pouncing. And then with the Giacchino score, oof. But the rest of the movie is still fantastic. The rest of Up is still brilliant, and I don't think most people talk about the rest of Up, like, other than the 10 minutes. But brilliant. And I hope that maybe the pops turn out better than they look. Who knows? But with that out all the way, look, this is a great first episode, if I say so myself. We went down some good topics. We talked about Star Wars, Tarintino, that great Arnold commercial. We just talked about Funko, streaming services, Endgame, re-release, and Far From Home. It was a great episode. I cannot wait till episode number 2. I may be wondering, when do the Kid Kritic podcasts release? Well, it will be a once-a-week podcast. I know. Oh, man, I wanted it every day. Sadly, once a week. It's going to be once a week. On Fridays, I'm aiming for. if I switch up the dates, I'll let you guys know, my loyal Kid Critic fans and new Kid Critic fans. I hope. But I thought this was a fantastic first episode. I hope you think so as well. We thought we went down some amazing topics. Obviously, we talked about movies, talked about television, and some other stuff like Jeremy Renner singing and that amazing Arnold's commercial with the Funko Pops. So you kind of get a feeling of what this podcast is going to be. We're talking about movies and some other fun stuff. That's what this is. The Kid Kritic Movie Podcast, where we talk about film and all that other fun stuff. And it was a great first episode. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube or something else. I don't know where else it's going to be on at this point, but trust me, by the next episode, I will know. So with that said, guys, leave me down a comment below. How can I make this podcast better? What was great about this podcast? Because that's what we love. We love to get better. And I thought it was a great first episode. Again, look out for the next episode or video or review or whatever I like to post. And as always, peace.